computer do? Okay. All right, so this is my next presentation on the tetrahedron. This is the third of the presentations. Now, instead of tetrahedron, I have used a different name for it. That I'll come to for now. But you see, this is actually one of the big things that I learned is that instead of thinking of the tetrahedron like this, you have to imagine the most fundamental way of thinking about tetrahedrons is to think of these four spheres at the corner so that they are touching each other like this, force. And that's what we are seeing here. Okay, these are the four spheres. This sphere, yellow sphere, is sitting on the top of the three spheres. That when you connect their centers, it becomes a tetrahedron. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, first, this entire development on tetrahedron is all Bucky inspired by Buckminster Fuller. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of, I want to explain what I'm doing with tetrahedrons with respect to what we are doing with Buckminster Fuller. It all started with CJs Four Onramps to synergetics. So this is something that he put together for our first meetup on Bucky-inspired comprehensivity. He says there are four approaches to really grasping Buckminster Fuller's thought. And the core idea there is synergetics. So he says there are these four, and these four represent that. There is a design axis where this green one, where you're focusing on actually designing something in the world. You can approach this thought that way. There is this approach. Let me start with this approach over here, which is the conceptual approach, which is the geometry approach, where you're saying, what is the structure of it? And this is all geometry based. Okay. There is another approach, which is collaboration based, which is based on trying to unify everything that you're hearing and provide a forum for collaboration. Okay. And the last, there is an approach which is integrity, which appeals to people who are into holistic thinking or any kind of religious tradition, like what we are doing with Gospel of John would fit in from here. So these are the four on-ramps. Now, I want to say, and this is mostly directed to people who are engaging us for the Bucky meetups, that not really 52 living ideas. This is really my two strengths and my two weaknesses. Okay. There are things that what I'm doing here even with these tetrahedrons right now, that I think I'm a little bit strong on. And for the rest, I'm a little bit weak on. The two things I'm strong on is, one is collaboration. I mean, this 52 Living Ideas Forum is really, we've done 1,000 meetups. People come with all kinds of ideas and we go back and forth with it. So collaboration is something that we can really offer, because it's not just me, it's basically everybody who leads any discussion, and like most of the people who participate on a regular basis have that built into us as something good, that we are really looking to learn from each other. So that collaboration we are very strong on. The second thing we are strong on is this part, which is the integrity part. Thanks to our study of Gospel of John, Bhagavad Gita, and Tao Te Ching, we have really developed pretty well on this. So these two things, I think 52 Living Ideas and me, we're pretty strong on. Okay. Relatively, we are weak on these two other pieces. And so, for example, I'm talking about the tetrahedral geometry. I don't know much. Okay. I expect to learn a lot from people who are much, 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 much better at it than I am. And that most of the people in 52 Living Ideas are. People who have spent decades thinking about geometry. Okay, so we're going to get people who are there. So whatever I'm saying about geometry here is very limited. Okay, the second one, the other one is design. How do you actually use these ideas to make things, to architect things? Again, that's something that I'm not strong on, and neither are most people here. Okay, so we are looking to learn a lot from it. I think the beauty of this diagram or tetrahedron is that you can use it to think about such things. Now, I have a new name for this, and this is my favorite name, quart orb. Okay, quart orb. So quart is 4, but it is not just 4. It is like 4 quart. I've broken it up. I call it quart orbs, but I want to break it up so that it is easy to see what it means and why it means. So firstly, these are orbs. I wanted a short name for spheres, and orb is the best name that I found. And it also happens to start with a vowel, which makes it easy for it to connect to the first word. Quart, instead of tetra, I like quart because tetra focuses on the 4-ness of the 4, whereas quart means that one of the 4 cups that you need to make a gallon. So it is one of 4. So quart orbs, when you're saying that this is a quart orb, that means you're saying it's a one thing which is made up of 4 things. Okay. And the way in which I am working on the tetrahedrons is not for geometry, not for design, but mostly on these 2 parts, kind of integrative, thinking integratively. It is Bucky inspired. But I'm using it in my own way, which is quite different from what Bucky has done. I don't know fully what Bucky has done. I look forward to learning a lot more about it. But I'm continuously inspired by many, many, many patterns that I'm discovering about these things, thanks to Bucky and to people who are working on this. So let me, with this introduction, this was all talking about what am I doing? Where does it fit in, and how does it fit in into with what Bucky has done, what Bucky community has done? How does it relate to what we are going to do? What we are going to do is we are going to work on all these 4 pieces. We've already scheduled 10 presentations. Okay, incredible presentations on Bucky, and they are going to be going and talking about each of these aspects in their own way. And what we are going to do is that we're going to be actually collaborating with all of them, learning from all of these in order to proceed. So with that, I'm going to now I'm going to make 1 or 2 points about this. All right. So these are set of words I have here. So we talked about truth, wisdom, goodness, and love. I use them as a primary means of thinking about this tetrad, these 4 things. So firstly, what is this? What kind of a thing is this? Is that you're trying to grasp a whole. Here you're trying to grasp, in case of truth, love, wisdom, and goodness, how should I be? What is the ideal? And it is being grasped through these 4 things, interacting with one another. The beautiful thing about the tetrahedron or the quart orb is that it is the minimum system. It is the simplest 3-dimensional shape. It is the minimal system, as Bucky does a fantastic job of developing. And that's what I've learned from Bucky. Now, what does system mean? That means it comes together as one. And what does the fact that it is four mean? That you can divide it so you can focus on individual parts, understand them. So you can understand truth, you can understand love, and you can understand the connections between two of them. You can see what happens when you combine three of them and what happens when you combine four of them. Now, all of these things that I have picked here are based on traditions which are integrative. So the first one is inspired by Gospel of John. So truth is God the Father, wisdom is God the Son, love is the helper, and goodness is you when you choose to be a child of God, when you accept this. The next ones are actually the weakest ones in formulating all of these. These are Jung's cognitive functions. I have spent a lot of time on them, but I find that these older traditions are far more integrative. Jung is trying to integrate, but he's a modern person. So partly him, though he always focused on the whole, which he called the self. And he saw these as aspects of the self, like the different functions, like William Blake talks about the four zoa or the four powers. And only when the four powers come together that you have true self, authentic self. And Jung, in his work, thought of these four functions, saying yes to all of them and developing all of them through a lifetime as being the task of individuation. So he too is looking for oneness. But unfortunately, most of the way in which it has been applied, it is more analytical, and they try to separate all of these out, not focused on the integration between these four. And then these four are the yogas: the Dhyana Yoga, which is all about concentration; Bhakti Yoga, which is all about devotion; Karma Yoga, which is all about work; and Jnana Yoga, which is about knowledge. They are also integrative. Gita holds that all of them are leading to the same thing. Now, when you're thinking using this quadrop as a tool, what you're doing is that you're trying to think integratively. You're trying to see connections. Now, first thing I want to point out is these four are not just four random things that are chosen. They actually cover a large area. Take, for example, the concept of wisdom. See, it is a very large concept. It is not about figuring out a truth of something, a rightness of a particular logic of a particular sentence. It's not thinking in that way. It is a far more larger concept of understanding so you can guide your actions properly, being in contact with the truth, making possible goodness, and be unifying in society that is full of love. So it is trying to bring together all these other things. Similarly, love is trying to bring together. The goodness is trying to actually relate to all these other things. So it is distinct, yet deeply connected to the other three. So with these four perspectives, you're able to get at the unity better. You're able to differentiate within what you're trying to integrate. That's what the function of this tetrahedron or quartorb as a tool for thinking does. It allows for integrative thinking. When we studied Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, and Gospel of John, we saw that that way of thinking was different from the way in which most people think today. What we noticed that way of thinking that was common to these three wisdom traditions was integrative. It tried to bring everything together, whereas modern world tends to be analytical, tries to divide things. So this is a way of making distinctions while keeping it all connected to the oneness. And that is the idea of quart, that it is 4 cups that are needed to make the gallon. You need all those 4 cups. Right? Let me go to the next one. This is a point that I want to make, is that, you know, the size of these orbs can change. So for example, what I said about our strengths, or my strengths, that we are stronger here and relatively weaker here, I would say. So you can represent it through things like this. So this is another kind of a way. Yesterday I went through this presentation where I showed how there is inflow and outflow between these orbs, between these quart orbs. Today, what I'm saying, today I'm kind of going a little bit into this and talking about how I am actually using this to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So that was a very quick presentation to add to everything that I've said before. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I would love to hear any comments or questions. Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to comment. We'll start with Evanik. Evanik.
The thing I loved about this presentation is I saw the 4 becoming one and yet remaining unique, or keeping their unique ability. And I think it describes us as human beings, right? We're all drawn to like one of those 4 areas, right? Like we may be drawn to bhakti. We talked about this Tuesday. We all have different paths, but it all comes together as one. It's that whole idea of bhakti, of unification. And unification doesn't mean like blending in and it all just looks like one thing. It means you keeping your own unique qualities, your own unique intelligence, your abilities, and you use those to contribute to the whole. And I think that's kind of the ideal world. Some people will call it a utopia, but I think the key is that you can't think that you're above anybody else, but you also can't think that you are below anybody else. And I think you have to recognize what you bring to the table, and what you don't have, other people will bring, like strengths and weaknesses, like you talked with 52 Living Ideas, the strengths of collaboration. But like we don't study Bucky that much. We don't study geometry that much in 52 Living Ideas. So this Bucky inspired Sundays, I think, will bring that element in, and bringing different people in that are experts in those fields will help unify.
Can I make one comment that I forgot to make? I want to
Sure.
add the point. I want to elaborate on the point that you're making about things being 4 at the same time unified. Okay. See, this is not the only way to do it. Okay, you can think of it. I find the most powerful way of doing it is actually to map it into your own, your own body. So for example, the wisdom is the head. Okay, so imagine like me as a quartrob now. Okay, so there is this one giant head over here, which is the wisdom. Okay, then you have the left hand, which is connected to your right brain. The left hand as the truth part, which is the intuitive part. Okay, then you have the right hand, which is the love or the feeling part. And then you have the rest of your body, the whole body, as the one sensing part, the karma yoga part, the goodness part, which is about your actions. So you've got one orb here, one orb here like this, and one orb here, and one orb here. Okay, so you can think, and your whole body has to work together. You have to be pursuing the truth. See, each of these ideas has very deep meaning. Okay, let me bring it up again. Let me, so each of these has very deep meaning. So let's just take the first one, like truth, right? Truth, just like wisdom, I said, is a large idea that captures everything. Truth here, or the idea of God, the Father, okay? It actually captures a lot. It is saying universal principle. It is saying your respect for the truth, your acceptance of the truth, your relentless pursuit of the truth, yours understanding that your understanding is limited and that there is so much more to understand, that you have to be looking out to any input from reality that is going to lead you there. So that entire approach of openness to reality, willingness to let go of anything that conflicts with the truth, all of that is captured in this large concept of truth. Take the concept of love. Love is, actually the best way to characterize it, though it is long, is it is a unifying force. It is anything that unifies. Love, when you look at it across, when I looked at it in 52, the 103 Great Ideas, Mortimer Adler's Syntopicon, it emphasizes that it is a very large emotion. It has so many different aspects. In the modern times, it has been narrowed into just one kind of love. But love throughout history is a much larger concept. It is basically to do with anything that unifies. So the helper actually captures that. It is the thing, it is that motivation that brings people together for all kinds. So that too is a very large idea. And goodness is basically just entire of kind of moral action, all captured in it. So each of them is a very large thing. So you can map these into your body itself. So you kind of embody it. You remember it very easily. Another way I have of mapping it is to use this amazing device I have called a hand. Okay, so you can keep this aside, but you can say that this is truth. This is the thing that you're pointing to. That's what you're trying to get at. I prefer using my left hand because I'm right-handed. So left hand is very much more connected to our pattern recognition. So this one is the truth. This one is the most forceful hand, which is the thing that is bring, wisdom, thinking, that is going to bring everything together. This is the love part. So this truth, wisdom, love, and this one. So it's like you can think of it as a tripod. This is in a separate domain. This is like the Trinity, and this is goodness. So I'm not using this finger, but these are the four. So you can kind of count it on the finger. So when you're thinking about something, okay, what am I focused on right now? So you can map it into your hand, you can map it into your body, but it's a way of thinking, always remembering, like when you're thinking about your left hand, don't forget that you have a right hand, and you need to apply this to anything. If you can look at it from these four perspectives at the same time, if you apply them one after another, you're able to think about things in a more integrative way. So it's a way of creating the habit of, firstly, these categories, these four axes have been very, chosen after a lot of careful thought, a lot of great works, like the 4 yogas. Okay, it's a result of a lot of work. The entire of New Testament is a result of a lot of work, lot of deep, deep thinking. Carl Jung is relatively new, but he's inspired by some of these old works, like the Gita, Indian philosophy. And those are deep insights. And what we are doing is that this is the use of something like this, or mapping it into the body, is a way to remember to use all of them together. So that's what I wanted to say. Go ahead, Evanique.
That is actually all I had, because
Okay,
you just said it so beautifully. So
wonderful.
I have
Thank you.
nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Evanique. Next up is Joe. Folks, if anybody else has anything to say, please go ahead and type exclamation mark. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had the freezing issue that continued a little bit. So I think that the power of the tetrahedrons that I've been thinking about the past few days is how to think about in terms of stable structures in every aspect of your life. And I think about it a lot. And I brought this up the other night in terms of organizational structures and how people only look at maybe a very small piece of what they do within an organization. They don't necessarily understand the whole and why they're doing what they're doing to begin with. And I think that that's what tetrahedrons actually allow us to think in terms of what is actually a complete thought. And that's a really important tool to have, because you start to think at a higher level by using that. One thing I've been trying to think, I've been just thinking about, and maybe I could throw it out there, but how does real, true, and ideal fit into a tetrahedron?
That's a much more kind of these concepts from Gospel of John are far more integrative than those.
Okay,
So those can be mapped in, but
that's what I was trying to do.
firstly, those are 3. So
yes,
basically what happens is that let me answer it this way. Let me bring up the diagram again. Let's look at things kind of historically. Like, for example, when you look at, let's take the 4 cardinal virtues, right?
okay.
And look at what is missing. Okay, so courage is about action. Justice is also about kind of a little bit about other people, but mostly about the goodness. I call it
Justice.
acceptance. Justice. What are the 4? What is the next one?
Justice, courage, temperance, wisdom.
Wisdom. So wisdom is wisdom. So we have this represented. We have this represented. Temperance is kind of a very small virtue. I look at acceptance, which is really the foundation of Stoicism, as being this side. What is really missing is this angle. The love angle is missing in those virtues. So when you look at the virtues that the New Testament brings, faith, hope, and charity, they're all focused on this part. Those are all various kinds of this. So you can look at it this way. Now, when you say like real, ideal, and true, right? So true is right here. Okay. Real is mostly about this part, and ideal is mostly about this part. So again, what is it missing is the love part. So I find that piece that was added in just a second. There is a problem with the sound. Let me see. Okay, Joe, I'm going to mute you so that there is no disturbance in the sound. So what happens is that this part of love is added later in Christianity in a big way. which was not there before. So the true ideal and real capture these parts, and they're missing this one. So that's my take on it. But I think, like, more than real, you can see how much goodness captures. More than ideal, I think wisdom actually captures. So basically this combination, so it's a question of what ideas together can capture everything. And I find that these 4 ideas are far more profound capturing of the nature of human existence, like the combination of dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, or karma yoga, or intuition, feeling, sensing, and thinking. These together cover the entire realm of humanness better than the ones that you talked about. So it's like, you know, I love the work of the design way. I think it is the most integrative, explicit thought that is there in the, in recent times. But what I'm saying is that these traditions are far, far more integrative than most modern traditions. Go ahead, Joe, if you'd like to say more.
No, thank you. I mean, again, I had a little bit of internet, a few internet issues.
That's all right. That's all right. Next up is Katie.
I'm wondering, you were saying that the tendency might be more to be analytical and to try to divide things up into part. I'm wondering whether that might also be because, like, some things don't integrate well, like love and hate, for example. You wouldn't want to integrate those two together. It'd be easy to integrate love and truth and wisdom, but you wouldn't want to integrate hate, even though that's part of the whole of reality. So I'm wondering, how does the negative side fit in? I'm wondering whether that relates to the analytical wanting to divide it out.
Okay, excellent question. I have not thought about it, so let me go ahead and try. So let's look at all the negatives and where do these negatives fit in. So let's look at negatives of all of these. So there is falsehood. In case of intuition, there is, I would say, fear. Instead of hate, I would use fear, because I think fear, in my understanding, I think the fear is much more opposite of love than hate, and it's very much connected to hate as well. So I'll talk about fear here. Wisdom, instead of that, let's call stupidity, and instead of goodness, we can say immoral or bad, something like that. So where does that come in? It's the way it is, it is seen in this diagram, is that is actually being out here, not by saying actually no to the center and to go away from it, to basically not to be outside of this. So you're saying, I don't want to actually unify things, I just want to divide things. And then you go out in this kind of no man's land, away from the center. We've talked about center and periphery. Center is the center of this entire, this is a shape, and there is a center inside of it. So all of these are trying to go towards the center, and there is this kind of dynamic balance that is there towards it. The opposite of these are trying to go away from the center. It is like saying no to the center, no to truth, no to goodness, no to love, no to unifying, and no to wisdom. So it is basically a movement away from. It is also a movement of tearing apart. See, these 4 things, have a magnetic attraction towards each other. So you can now think of it as energy. You can see that there is attraction between truth and wisdom. There is attraction between goodness and love. They tend to hang together, whereas all the negative things tend to tear things apart. to take things apart. So these are all mapped of just kind of taking fragments of this and taking them away from each other. So that's how I would answer the point about negatives. Next up is Joe.
So would that actually be the negative almost be if you had the Jungian shadow?
That's I mean, it's better to see it in terms of center and periphery. It is moving
Okay.
away from the center.
Okay.
Jungian shadow is a very complex concept, so I'm not qualified to go into that. It is far more complicated. It is basically Jungian shadow, the way I would put it, the best way I understand the Jungian shadow is this. What happens is that many people have these two functions, so for example, are prominent. And as a result of that, some things are not focused on. And like the most inferior function, or there are functions that are kind of pushed into kind of unconscious or almost unconscious as a result of focusing on something else, so that you're losing half part of yourself in unconscious. Your commitment to actually cycling through all of your beings is the commitment to integrate your shadow, because he held that the self is the whole. And shadow is when you focus repeatedly. So for example, if I were to focus only on these two things and say, no, geometry is bad. No, actual design in the world is bad. That would be actually creating a shadow. But if I say, look, I'm weak at this and I want to learn and therefore grow, then you are it's a way of embracing your weakness. And so the simplest way I can connect it, I don't think I'm actually interpreting his ideas, I'm simply connecting it to this diagram. So the equivalent of Jungian shadow is when you are focused on some things so intensely that you do not focus on some other parts of your quadrop, your 4 parts, and you drive them into the unconscious. That's the mechanism that he's talking about. That's how I would map it to this. All right, anybody else? Last chance. If you have comments, go ahead and type exclamation mark. Otherwise, folks, this is amazing. I enjoy doing these little presentations, and I plan to have one for you tomorrow. So let me tell you about tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are going to be going through Gitanjali, which is the masterpiece, a Nobel Prize winning book book of poems. Gitanjali is like an offering of poems. Git is song, so it's offering of song to God. And it's actually the most accessible way of understanding Indian philosophy. So if you're interested in Indian philosophy, I hope you'll join us, and we will go through Gitanjali. We're going to just read the poems, and then I would love to hear what you have to say about it, and we will connect it up to everything that we have learned in Bhagavad Gita. You will see the echoes of all the ideas of Bhagavad Gita in it. So really looking forward to it. Thank you very much, everybody. See you soon. Bye.